Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So I've discussed at various times in the past how it seems odd that so many people would like us to believe that they are convinced that Brexit is a great boon for the UK, and yet are unable to name me any tangible benefits without obvious lies. But Brexit is here now, and although I don't expect the benefits overnight, just like I wouldn't expect after an election of a fit and suitable government for everything to improve overnight, it's fair enough that these things can take time. I still find it odd that the only benefits even being touted are lies. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, quite a lot of lies concerning Brexit benefits that were demonstrably false some time ago. However, there were always those who would insist that, well, you don't actually know what's going to happen. You're not Nostradamus, you know. We'll have to wait and see. Incapable of abstract thought or actually reading things to find out for themselves, they insisted that they needed to see it in reality for themselves. Well, this process has now begun. We're a few days into Brexit and already 6 lies have been brutally exposed, which I shall go through now. 1. Fishing rise. So this one was blown apart even before Brexit Day. Just 2 weeks ago, if you'd have asked people, generally Brexit supporting people, they would have been utterly convinced that by now it would only be British fishing vessels fishing in UK controlled waters. All right, sure, there might have been the odd French fishing vessel, but we'll get the Royal Navy onto them. War with France, here we come. Frankly, it was an embarrassing enough belief for an average member of the public. But even some working in fishing communities exposed their own ignorance of their own industry by believing it too. I could not understand how people can work in an industry and not actually take the time to work out how it would be impacted by Brexit. You know, now I do have to point out there were many in the fishing industry that knew that it was not going to be good news for them, but there was some who thought it was, and this lie was taken out back and shot in the head with Boris Johnson's deal, which doesn't really change very much at all for the fishing industry. There is a reduction of about 25% of foreign fishing in British waters by value, almost completely compensated by removing fishing quotas from British fishing vessels in other waters. It's like, okay, you want to fish more in your own waters? Fine, you'll be fishing less in ours. That's how it works. Now, we do get an overall gain by value of about 2.3% over 5 years. Doesn't happen straight away, but this was all supposed to happen straight away, over 5 years, after which the whole thing is up for review. Now, you can choose to believe that in 5 years' time, all of those quotas will return to the UK, as some Brexiteers are doing. If so, please get in touch, because I'd like to offer you the sale of Buckingham Palace for a knockdown bargain price. Because here's what, to believe that, here's what you have to believe. You have to have believed that Boris Johnson was going to bring back British fishing waters for only British fishing vessels now, because that's what he said he was going to do. You believed it. Now you're going to believe, okay, he hasn't done it now, but he's going to do it in 5 years' time. Really? Really? So many in the fishing industry, however, are not believing that, and they are furious, absolutely fuming. Not only don't they get the increased quotas that they were promised, but they now face trade barriers when selling the fish that they were catching anyway, because it's going to take longer to be able to get it to market because of customs declarations and other things. Moral of the story, don't believe Tory lies. Especially don't believe Tory lies when the leader is someone who has actually been sacked multiple times for lying. I mean, have people learned that moral now? Have they? I guess we'll find out in 2024. Second lie was concerning pulse fishing. Tory MPs and other Brexiteers were boasting about how we've just banned pulse fishing and could only have done so once we'd left the EU and transition period, which is another lie. People are pointing out that the EU actually banned it in 2019 and it's just come into force this month. You know, it was going to come into force even if we'd still been in the EU, even if we'd still been in the transition period, but outside of the EU, the same date in the UK as everywhere else in the EU. In other words, what we've actually just done is implemented an EU law. So we're outside of the EU, We're even outside of the transition period, and yet our first act was to implement EU law. That is somehow billed as a Brexit benefit. In fact, I gather that actually more accurately, the EU largely banned pulse fishing in 1998 in general, but there was a small amount allowed for research, which has now been completely banned. So yes, a benefit of Brexit, according to these charlatans, is apparently implementing EU laws. Third one was the tampon tax. It's another lie. So we have abolished VAT on tampons at long last. Now this is not an EU law implemented. This was actually the British Parliament after years of campaigning from many people. But the Conservatives are claiming that this is only because we left the EU, that the EU insisted we put VAT on tampons. Now, VAT has of course got nothing to do with the EU. But how do you prove that to someone who can't be bothered to read what is up to the EU? Well, for a start, it's noted that at least in Germany and Ireland, there is also zero VAT on tampons. But hang on a minute, they're in the EU. How can they have zero VAT on tampons if the EU don't allow that? Seems that the EU do allow it. In fact, it's got nothing to do with them. I pointed out in an earlier video that we have zero VAT in the UK and have done for decades on a whole range of products. The idea that the EU have any say over VAT rates was absurd before, but what makes this lie particularly unpleasant, and this is a particularly unpleasant lie, is that in actual fact, not only could we have abolished it before, we tried to. In 2015, Labour put forward a motion to scrap VAT on tampons. And it was defeated by the very same Conservative MPs, such as, for example, Rishi Sunak and Steve Baker, who are now loudly cheering its demise. Oh, we've been waiting. Steve Baker almost wiped away a tear. I've been fighting for this for so long. So many years I've been fighting for this day. You voted against it in 2015, mate. It wasn't that many years, was it? And he had the nerve to say he'd been fighting for this change when he voted against it. The fourth desperate attempt at a lie was regarding freight across our borders. So Conservatives and Brexiteers were quick to point out the lack of queues at the border. So what they failed to mention was that traffic at Dover was only 8% of the normal level because hauliers had been putting in extra shifts in the weeks leading up to Brexit so that they could completely avoid the ports altogether at the start of Brexit. And this is what's actually happened. You know, you had the likes of John Redwood going, I'll see there's no delays at the ports then. There's no lorries there either, mate. How can you have delays when there's no lorries? You know, we had almost no freight passing at all. This will inevitably change this week, you know, and as the month progresses as well. I said before, let's see what happens when they try and get 10,000 lorries a day through Dover. It's not happening. Won't be possible. And if we can't manage the same volume of freight, this is what we need to be. It's all right lying about it. You know that the lie is going to be exposed at some point. There's going to come a point where we cannot get that amount of freight through. And that means we can't trade as much. That means we can't export as much. It means we can't import as much. If we can't export as much, then UK businesses make less money. If we can't import as much, well, if they're importing things to turn into stuff that they then export, then that's still UK businesses not making as much money, and we don't get the goods, the choice of goods we wanted. In fact, if there was nothing to worry about regarding freight at our ports, if it was always going to be no delays, nothing wrong with it at all, what on earth do they think all the lorry parks are for? Just in case. Which brings me on to the fifth one. For some time we were told that there would be no issues at border ports because we could just implement some magic technological solution that would deal with everything. Oh, it would be marvellous. It'll look inside the lorries and tell exactly what's in there and give them the yay or nay. We don't need anyone to operate them. It'll be completely invisible. It's going to be brilliant. Then, no sooner had we left the EU and it was all about implementing these magical solutions, Brexiteers like Jacob Rees-Mogg seemed to forget them altogether. Oh, all of a sudden, where's these technological solutions, Mr. Rees-Mogg? Oh, I'm not sure. I think they might be down the back of my sofa. I'll go and have a look later. Earlier this year, the people of Kent, in particular, which are our two major ports are, awoke to the sights and sounds of major construction in their green and pleasant, albeit largely xenophobic, Brexit-supporting land. Not that these parks are fully operational and won't be for a while yet. Some are not due to become operational until June. Now, consider what this means. You might imagine that the lorry parks are just needed while we get our systems up to speed. It's all right, Phil. They were a bit late. We accept that they were a bit late on implementing new systems. We know that France have implemented them and tested them and they're all working. Ours aren't. We were a bit slow on that. Sorry about that. But we will get them up to speed and then it'll be fine. Okay, so why do we need extra capacity in July then? That's over and above what we're going to need for the first 6 months. New lorry park capacity is intended to come online in June. Think on that. Why would we need that extra capacity after half a year of improving our systems? The reason is obvious. It's because we're going to get worse after the first half year. Now, why does that make sense, Phil? Surely, even if you think the government are completely incompetent, they're not actually going to get worse after half a year. No, the systems, I'm sure, will get better after half a year, but the delays will be worse. And this isn't some prediction based on a dim view of government competence. It's based on their own policies, because at the moment, all the checks are happening outbound. The UK government is managing its customs checks by not actually carrying them out. So we don't carry out checks on goods coming from the EU into the UK, which is not only unlawful, but an absolute boon to smugglers. Brilliant news for smugglers. Nothing is being checked on the UK side, but the government know that they can't keep that up forever. So it's intended to last for 6 months. After the end of June, we are going to be carrying out those checks. So that means, in order to actually fulfill our international obligations at last, that means that lorry delays will get worse as you will now have checks in both directions. That's why we need the extra capacity. So don't imagine that it's going to be really bad in January, then it'll get a bit better in February and carry on there. It will, I expect to anyway, but then in July it'll spike up again. And then the sixth and final lie so far, Boris Johnson was asked yesterday in another worthless Andrew Marr interview what benefit Brexit would bring to the communities that he and his party had left behind. Free ports, he said. Now, they've tried this one before. Two things though. One, free ports do not bring benefits to ordinary citizens in the area. So if you've got a community that's been left behind by the Conservatives, a free port is not going to improve their lives. Secondly, free ports are not banned in the EU. In fact, there are free ports in the EU. We even had them in the UK. And the last one was abolished by the current government. They got rid of it. The only administration to actually ban free ports around here has been the Conservative government. So it looks like we're going to have to continue to wait for an actual benefit of Brexit. And we will keep on waiting. Like I said, if there were genuine benefits, it's not like they'd have to prove them straight away. It's perfectly reasonable to expect that they would take time to develop. But if they were on their way, the government could at least tell us about them. The fact that if you ask them, even Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, if you ask them for a single benefit of Brexit, the only response they can give is a demonstrable lie. That simply exposes that even they don't believe that there are any benefits of Brexit. Because there aren't any. At least not to ordinary members of the public anyway. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. Until next time, I'll see you later.